All right, let's talk transformation stories. So, I'm going to walk you through mine. And believe it or not, I actually have three. So, when you have been with Beachbody for as long as I have, you've had the chance to really have your life unfold, and you most likely have walked through different seasons. And so, I want to take you to the season that I started with, then walk you to a season that I have walked through and closed that chapter and moved on to a new equally challenging phase of life. How about that? So let's talk about when I started. So when I started, it was February of 2014, and my son was 2 years old. I'll never forget the night, and I'm going to take you there because I feel like it's important. I feel like your story of how you got started is actually pretty powerful. So my son was 2 years old. I shared with you that I was teaching full time. I was taking graduate classes. I was doing all the things, but I was really doing a terrible job of taking care of myself, meaning that I was running myself ragged. My house was spotless, my laundry was done, I was keeping up with my lesson plans at teaching. Like, I was just doing all the things, but at the end of the day, when my head hit the pillow every night, there were a couple things that I wasn't doing. I wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't doing things to minimize the stress that my lifestyle was causing. And I promise you, there was no exercise. None. I hadn't exercised since before I even got pregnant with my son. In fact, growing up, I never even liked exercise. And when I went to the gym before I had kids, the only thing I knew how to do at the gym was just run tirelessly on the treadmill, and then I'd go and do a little bit of free weights. I truly knew nothing about fitness, and it wasn't something that was a part of my world, and it was not my lifestyle. Growing up, I grew up on Hamburger Helper, ramen noodles, Cherokee Red Soda, Pepsi's, Mountain Dew. I love salty foods. I love sugar. Like, my nutrition was terrible, but it's because it was all I knew. And it's not that my parents didn't make me dinners. I had dinners, but it's just that they were comfort foods. So there were casseroles and meatloafs and potatoes and corn every night, and that's what I knew. So things like arugula, they weren't part of my vocabulary, and neither was quinoa. So I had a lot to learn, and so I didn't start like this. I think it's just really important for you guys to know. Like, you look at me right now, if you follow me on Instagram or maybe on Facebook, and you're like, she's got it down, right? She exercises almost daily. She's eating clean all the time. Like, she's got it figured out. But please know, I didn't, and I didn't grow up this way. So I had to learn it, just like you're gonna have to learn it. And what happened was, life caught up to me, right? I started to get a little older into my 20s, and I had a baby, and I had stress, and I had a poor lifestyle, right? Like, I wasn't doing so hot. And so all of a sudden, my head would hit the pillow each night, and I'd think, oh, you're not doing a good job of taking care of you, right? You're rocking it in all the other aspects of your life, but you suck at self-care. I had to look in the mirror, and I had to realize, like, this can't be what I teach my children, right? Like, I literally was like, oh my gosh, I hope my kids never treat themselves the way I'm treating myself. And it was really eye-opening, but it was also change-provoking. And so I remember, and I'm going to get really descriptive because I think it's powerful. So I remember whenever I was teaching, I had 5 pounds that I needed to lose from having Carter 2 years later. And I kept calling it baby weight, but let's be straight. After 2 years, it's not really baby weight. It's just weight. And I was making it nearly impossible to get rid of it because I was spending my mornings hitting the drive-thru at Starbucks. I was drinking grande white mochas every day, and I was crashing. The energy levels were crashing by 11. I'd come home after school, and I'd just eat whatever I could find as fast as I could find to get me through the evenings. My nutrition was horrific. So all of a sudden, so was my waistline, right? So was my confidence level. So was a lot of things, right? I might have looked thin, because I've always been thin, if you looked at me from the outside. But you would know that if you were looking at me, without the sweater or without the scarf or whatever it was that I was wearing, you'd see that I wasn't taking care of myself. And my confidence showed that. Because I used to sit in meetings when I was teaching, or I'd sit to grade papers, and I would sit like this, always. This is how I always sat. always. And I would do this all the time. I would take my hand and I would like squeeze what at the time, I'm going to make it a love handle, were my love handles. And they would roll over my pants. And I remember thinking, how did you get here? This isn't okay. It's not okay. And so I made a change. And so the night of my son Carter's second birthday, I researched the 21 Day Fix because it was coming out then. It was brand new. And I looked for every reason why it wouldn't work. I tried Pinterest, I tried Google, I tried everything. But all signs pointed to this possibly being my solution. The portion control containers that it came with, that was my jam. I'm a planner. I love to organize things. So the thought of color coding my food and planning out meals for the week seemed exciting. And it seemed like something I could be successful at. So that night, I did something that I've never done before. I bought a meal replacement shake. I bought a fitness program, and I bought what I hoped was a ticket to a different future. I put it on a credit card. At the time, I didn't have the money. I was working as a teacher. We lived in a comfortable home. My husband made a comfortable income. But at the end of the day, after we paid all of our bills and we paid for my son to be in daycare full time and the mortgage on our house and our car payment and all the things that so many of you can relate to paying for, there wasn't much left at the end of the day. And we were living, but we weren't living with excess. And so a challenge pack that cost $140 was actually not in my budget. So I put it on my credit card. I told my husband the next day, and I thought he was going to be mad because I didn't ask. Not that I have to ask, but in a marriage, I feel like we're very open with what we do and buy. But I just did it. And he said, it's okay. He's like, but you just have to make sure, you have to promise that you're going to do this, and it's not going to sit in the TV stand and collect dust. But he also said, enjoy it because we can't afford it next month, right? You can have Shakeology, but we're not buying it again. And it became my change provoker, right? I decided that I was going to go all in. I decided that I would be the best challenger in the group. I posted my workouts every day. I got up at the crack of dawn before I would go and teach. And every morning, I would roll out of bed and my feet would hit the floor while he was still sleeping. And I would work out alone. And I would eat different dinners at the time than all of that, my husband and my son. And I was showing up when I wasn't being, not that he wasn't supportive, but he wasn't doing it. It wasn't his lifestyle. It was just me becoming someone new and becoming somebody who valued new things. And so it was a journey, but it worked. And what happened was very quickly, a month in, I wasn't just a client. I wanted to be a coach for two reasons. Number one, I liked it and I was having fun and I was posting like a coach. But number two, I started to get interested in the financial opportunity. The thought of being able to afford Shakeology, like that was the first thing that went into my mind was, this is working. Shakeology is good. I actually like it, right? Even though I was so afraid of it, I actually like it. But now, how am I going to afford it? Because I can't, because it's not in my budget. And so I realized very quickly that if I could begin to help others get results just like I did and become just as passionate about health and fitness and Beachbody, then all of a sudden my Shakeology would be paid for. But what began to happen was I had a passion that was contagious, and people would look at me and say, what are you doing? And they were interested in what I was quote unquote having. You know, the whole, you look at someone and you're like, I'll have what she's having, right? Because she looks happy and she looks healthy and she's doing what I'm not. And that started to rub off at work. And my coworkers and my family and my friends started to kind of scratch their head and say, hold on, wait, what are you doing again? And what are those weird containers you keep eating out of for your lunch? And you exercised at what time? Like, I remember my family members being like, what? But all of a sudden they saw a new me. And it was a me who was hungry for a different life. And I made a decision that I was never going to look back, that I would still enjoy treats. I would still have the comfort food when I felt like it, but I was going to live a life that I was going to be proud to teach my children how to live too. And that I was going to be the kind of mom that if I ever had daughters someday, because at the time I didn't, they could look up to me and say, I want to be just like my mom. And same for my son. But particularly as a strong young woman, I wanted them to have a mom who was as strong and confident as I wanted them to be. So I made it my mission that I didn't turn back. And so I never quit. 5 years later, I never quit. I went through infertility as a coach and I shared it. I went through miscarriage as a coach and I shared it. I went through pregnancy after all of that infertility stuff and I shared it. I went through my first postpartum transformation as a coach and I shared it. I shared a real postpartum transformation, not one from a mom who was carrying around 2 years of baby weight. I went all in with my business and I showed people that it didn't matter what season you were in. It didn't matter if you were 2 years postpartum or if you were pregnant or if you were trying desperately to get pregnant. It didn't matter. You could still inspire someone by sharing your words and your story. So I did just that. I shared my life unapologetically, unfiltered. And sometimes some people might say I shared too much. But because I shared so much, I was able to form really incredible relationships with people all through social media who I've never, honestly, a lot of them I've never met in real life. These people came on journeys with us. They watched me move up and move my house because now, thanks to coaching, all of a sudden I was retired and I didn't need to live where I lived anymore. And we made a huge life-altering decision to move closer to our family. But it's only happened because we were able to go because I was no longer teaching. I was coaching full time. My world changed, not just from a physical sense, but from a financial sense, from a confidence sense, from my marriage changed, the way I became a mom, everything changed. And I know you're thinking it's just a challenge pack. It can't change that much. If you want it to, it can. It can be the catalyst that changes the rest of your life. I'm sitting in this incredible life right now that's, yeah, some days it's really hard. But I know that it was put on my path because God knew that I needed it. So anyways, I'll leave off where it was. So I shared a postpartum transformation and it was like fire for my business. I shared breastfeeding. I shared all the things that were going on in my life and I attracted other moms who were in the same season. I also shared with them what it looked like to have a second miscarriage when I got pregnant unexpectedly when my daughter was 9 months old. And then shared again what it looks like to go through trauma, loss, postpartum anxiety, and also postpartum depression. It was hard to share. There were days when I wanted to be small and I wanted to stay off social media and say, no way, this is too deep, I'm not going there. But instead, I knew that I had to rise up because I knew that someone, somewhere on social media needed my story. And that maybe, just maybe, by me sharing unapologetically, I could help them just like others have helped me. And so I did. I just kept sharing. And then I was blessed again with another rainbow baby, and I shared that pregnancy. I also shared some really hard times with my followers this past year. My market and what I talk about has really changed because I went from being this glowing, happy pregnant person to being someone who was pregnant a few weeks away from giving birth and learning that her brother had cancer, and in a very aggressive kind. So I've watched my brother battle cancer. I've shared it with all of you over the last 6 months as he's been hospitalized and he's underwent stem cell transplants. It's been hard. There are days when it has been hard to show up and it's been hard to share. I shared what it was like to be a mom of 3 children. I've shared the chaos. I've shared what it looks like when postpartum depression comes back. And instead of fighting it just through exercise and food, I chose to fight it through an antidepressant and therapy. I've shared it. I've shared what it looks like when you lose a loved one very closely, unexpectedly. This summer, my husband's brother took his own life by suicide. And I've had to walk through that. So I share all this because through all that, through cancer, through postpartum, through depression, through suicide, I've continued to work on my own transformation story. I would encourage you, if you don't believe that I'm the real deal, I would encourage you to take a deep scroll through my feed. I want you to see that I am the coach who's been here for the long haul, who walks the walk, who talks the talk, who is Beachbody Blue, right? They always say be Beachbody Blue, right? There it is behind me. Everything's Beachbody. My life is Beachbody, right? So I'm going to rephrase that. My life is not Beachbody. My life is my family. My life is my marriage. My life is my message and being a child of God. But what my platform for sharing my life is through Beachbody. And that's how I've been able to help people. And that's how I think I can help you. So I want you to think long and hard. Don't decide today. I always tell my clients, pray about it. Pray about it and decide, are you being called to do this? Are you being called to step into this role? This role is challenging. There are days when everyone tells me no, they're not ready, or they don't want to start a fitness journey, or no, thank you, I'm good, please don't ask. But there are also days where people tell me that I'm the reason they changed their life. Or they tell me, Sarah, I'm not ready to start my journey, but I love following you on social media because you're so authentic and real. That is what I want you to do. I want you to become the coach who is just as real on social media as they are in real life. And I want you to be a product of the product, just like I am. I want you to join my sisterhood, my tribe, whatever you want to call it, my team. I want to mentor you. But more than anything, I want to help you have a life like I have. One that is totally transformed, both physically, both financially, both spiritually. I'm a different Sarah than when I started 5 years ago. And I am certain that if you show up here and you join my team and you say there's no plan B, I'm going all in, I'm doing this thing, and I'm going to be a new version of myself, you're going to love her. You're going to look in the mirror someday and be like, I fought really hard to become her, and I'm really proud of her. So, with that being said, thanks for listening to my story. I hope it's touched you, and I'm grateful that you've been a part of it and that you've cheered me on along the way.